Hello, I'm Ramsey Burt, and in this video I'm going to talk about the eerie qualities evoked in the films The Red Shoes and Black Swan. I'm not the first person to compare these two films. When Black Swan came out, some of the reviews already started comparing the two. They're films which have employ some very experienced ballet dancers, so there's high quality dancing in them. I'm particularly interested in, as I say, the eerie qualities, and it's something that ballet theatre can produce. Kind of, one thinks of the curse from the evil fairy in Sleeping Beauty, or the vengeful Villiers in the woods in Giselle, or the toys that come to life in the Nutcracker. That's something that ballet can do. It can evoke kind of magical forces. In these two films, however, the kind of malign forces that are there in the stories of the ballets that are performed as part of the film somehow escape from the stage and take over the lives of the two women with kind of, well, it doesn't end well. So you may not have seen one or the other of these films, or you may have only seen them a while ago, so I thought it would be worth just starting with brief spoilers. The Red Shoes from 1948, in it Vicky Page, played by Moira Shearer, gets herself hired by the Ballet Lermontov, and the Ballet Lermontov is clearly meant to remind people of the Ballet Russe. And Vicky's then chosen to be the star of a new ballet that Lermontov wants to make, the Ballet of the Red Shoes, based on a story by Hans Christian Andersen. And in this, a dark force is exerted by the eponymous Red Shoes, which, once put on, force their wearer to dance and not be able to stop dancing. Off stage, faced with the impossible choice between her art and her marriage, between her husband and Lermontov, the Red Point Shoes take control of Vicky and cause her to dance backwards out of the theatre and jump to her death. In Black Swan from 2010, Nina Sayers, played by Natalie Portman, is a highly skilled but insecure young ballet dancer in a company based at Lincoln Center in New York, the actual home of New York City Ballet, though I don't think it's ever actually made explicit that this is New York City Ballet. Nina's chosen by the artistic director Thomas Leroy, played by Vincent Castle, to star in the dual roles of Odette, the White Swan, and Odile, the Black Swan, in a new version of Swan Lake that he has decided to put on. And as I said, Nina is a very insecure young dancer, a fine technician, but unsure about herself in many ways, and her insecurity is fed by the competitive atmosphere in the company, all the people who auditioned for the role who didn't get it, and jealous of Nina. And also Nina's insecurity is not helped by Leroy's rather inappropriate coaching, or the smothering attention from Nina's wonderfully monstrous mother, Erica, played by Barbara Hershey. And then Leroy tells her what she really needs is to have a kind of ooze the sexiness that another young dancer, Lily, played by Mila Kunis, exudes. And Nina's not really sure about Lily, whether she's somebody who could be her friend or whether she's a rival. And all of this pressure leads to a series of strange events that gradually challenge the spectator's credibility. Black Swan is in many ways a horror film, a creeping sense of dread about what's happening to Nina leads to a grisly denouement. So the two films were made over 60 years apart, and the idea of what it's like to be in a ballet company producing a new ballet that each film conveys is very, very different. And the difference between the two companies can be seen quite clearly by comparing a scene from each. After the success of the Red Shoes, and when Nina goes on to dance for other roles in Ballet Lermontov, all of the dancers go off to a kind of idyllic harbour-side open-air restaurant by the Mediterranean to celebrate the birthday of one of a senior member of the company, Grisha, who I'll say more about in a bit. And clearly here, these dancers who know one another well, dance together, have bonded through the act of dancing together, and they're generally a friendly, happy lot. In Black Swan, however, what we see are of the company are scenes. Company members seem to hang out, squatting on the floor in the seemingly subterranean maze of corridors under Lincoln Center, and in this, Nina seems to be the recipient of some somewhat hostile and suspicious glances. There's kind of transactional relationships, competitiveness, and kind of hostility within the company. There's none of the kind of friendliness that you can see in Ballet Lermontov. So in both films, the creepy gothic atmosphere of the ballet's fairy stories, as I've said, seem to escape from the stage and infect these dancers' lives with tragic consequences. Eerie qualities in these two films are different, however, because of their different historical contexts, and it's placing the eeriness of the films within their broader historical background. That's what I want to talk about in this video. In trying to think about this, I've been reading Mark Fisher's 2016 book, The Weird and the Eerie. In this, Fisher argues that the disruptive qualities of weirdness and eeriness are often underappreciated because of the dominance in writing about fantasy and horror stories of Freud's essay on the uncanny. Uncanny is an inadequate English translation of the German word unheimlich, which suggests the unhomely or the strange in the familiar. It's something familiar that has become strange. Mark Fisher argues that the weird and the eerie have nothing to do with the familiar, but are threats that come from the outside. The weird, he says, is something alien that does not belong, and his prime example of this is the horror fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. The eerie, which I'm saying is evoked in The Red Shoes and Black Swan, is a feeling that, as he puts it, there's something there where there should be nothing, or nothing there where there should be something. An eerie cry, he says, is one in which there is something more in or behind the cry than a mere animal reflex or biological mechanism. An eerily empty location, he mentions as an example the ghost ship, the Marie Celeste, is one that makes one wonder what happened to empty it. The red point shoes in The Red Shoes are eerie because, beyond the physical material they're made from, there's a force exerted on the dancer wearing them, something there from outside where there should be nothing. In Black Swan, things appear to be happening to Nina that seem inexplicable. Some force is eerily present that stops both her and the camera spectator from seeing what's really happening, while showing instead things that aren't. Vicky and Nina are both therefore losing agency to eerie forces. Mark Fisher says that the eerie turns on the problem of agency. Quote, "It's about the forces that govern our lives and the world." And in particular, he's interested in the way books and films reveal the social and political forces that govern our lives, and talks about this in terms of capitalism. This suggests that underlying the eeriness in each film are forces that were at work when they were created, things that made people uncomfortable so that they didn't want to acknowledge their existence. Fisher calls this the hidden other of their times. I'm going to suggest that the eerie scenes in The Red Shoes and Black Swan reveal things about the hidden other of their respective times. I'll show how modernity and ideologies of progress are eerie presences in the background of The Red Shoes, while neoliberal individualism is behind the sense of dread in Black Swan. So, The Red Shoes, modernism and modernity. So, by modernity, I mean modern life, the contemporary, the new, the way things progress offers an opportunity that the new is better than the old. Modernism, kind of aesthetic force, aesthetic approach that is in some ways produced by modern times, is in some ways an aesthetic response to it, but can sometimes perhaps be seen as in some ways critical of revealing things within contemporary life that are perhaps beneath the surface. And Ballet Lermontov, as I've said, is for viewers in 1948, in particular, when Diaghilev, who died in 1929, that's 19 years earlier. There are lots of connections that people would have recognised in 1948 between Ballet Lermontov and Diaghilev's Ballet Russe. And Diaghilev had an important role as a promoter of modernism in the arts in general. One of the most famous early 20th century modernist pieces of music is Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. All the kind of well-known early pieces by Stravinsky were commissioned by Diaghilev for ballets for the Ballet Russe. Picasso is one of the most famous painters, modernist painters, the first half of the 20th century, or for most of the 20th century. And he was not that well known until Diaghilev started commissioning sets and costumes from him. So there's distinct connection between modernism and modernity and Ballet Russe, and these are very much picked up in The Red Shoes. And Ballet Lermontov, based in Monte Carlo, that's where Diaghilev's Ballet Russe were based. That's where they went to in the summer to rehearse and create new ballets, which is what happens in The Red Shoes. But actually in the cast of The Red Shoes, in Ballet Lermontov, are dancers with direct or very close connections to Diaghilev's Ballet Russe. So in this photograph, here's 4 figures backstage in a break in rehearsals. The standing man with black trousers and a white shirt pointing is Leonid Massin, who plays the role of Grisha Lyubov, who's a senior member of the company, choreographer, regisseur. The man he's pointing to, sitting down with a tartan dressing gown on, is Robert Helpman, who plays the role of Ivan Boleslavsky, and he's the principal male lead in the company. And with her hand protectively on Helpman's shoulder is Lyudmila Cherina, who plays the role of Irina Boronskaya. Massine was recruited by Diaghilev in 1914, basically because he just sacked Nijinsky because Nijinsky got married. He needed a new male principal and choreographer for the company. He takes up Massine. He basically coaches him as a choreographer and dancer. Just worth noting that just as Diaghilev sacks Nijinsky because he's got married, Lermontov sacks Irina Boronskaya when she gets married, and that's how Vicky gets the chance to star in the ballet of the Red Shoes. And then when Vicky gets married, Lermontov sacks her as well. Helpman. So Helpman wasn't a member of the Ballet Russe, but danced with several people who were. As a teenager in Australia, he was hired as a ballet apprentice by the Anna Pavlova's company as they were touring Australia. And following this, Helpman moved to London, where he was hired by Ninette de Valois for her Vic Wells ballet. The Vic Wells ballet subsequently became the Royal Ballet. De Valois had danced for Diaghilev, and in Vic Wells ballet, Helpman danced with Alicia Markova, who also danced for Diaghilev, and other members of the Ballet Russe. Lyudmila Cherina was one of the so-called baby ballerinas, daughters of impoverished, exiled Russian aristocrats who were trained up by former ballerinas from the Ballet Russe and went on the stage at a very early age. Cherina's father was a Georgian prince in exile, impoverished, and she made her first professional appearance on the ballet stage at the age of 10 or 11. At the age of 15, she was hired as a star for the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. And there's also a brief cameo appearance by Marie Rambert. Marie Rambert was hired by Diaghilev to be Nijinsky's assistant while he was choreographing Le Sacre du Printemps, the Rite of Spring. Early on in the Red Shoes, Vicky makes a guest appearance with Marie Rambert in Marie Rambert's Mercury Theatre. And this is a very basic theatre, a kind of corrugated iron hall with basic seating and basic music and sound equipment. So the music was provided on 78 records, and they only last about 5 minutes each, and so they had to be changed regularly without a break while the dancing is going on. And here's Marie Rambert at the back of her auditorium. Somebody makes a slight glitch, changing from one record to the other, and Marie Rambert winces. As I said, after the success of the Ballet of the Red Shoes, Lermontov decides to revive other pieces in the company's repertoire with Vicky as the star. And these are all Ballet Russe ballets. And indeed, the first ballet that we see Vicky in is La Boutique Fantastique, which was actually one of Massine's ballets, created in 1919 for Les Ballets Russes. Then we see her in two other Ballet Russe ballets, Petrushka and Carnival, both key roles for Nijinsky. There are other connections with modernism European mid 20th century modernism in the Red Shoes through the designer for the film and costumes and sets, Hein Heckroth. Heckroth had, among other things, been the designer for the Ballet Jos, the German dance theatre company, who won the first prize in the Concours International Chorégraphique in Paris in 1933 with the Green Table. Heckroth designed the Green Table, but he also designed another ballet at the same time, the big city, Großstadt. And if you look at photographs of Großstadt, look at the costumes, the working class characters with cloth caps with exaggerated, theatrically exaggerated peaks, and the middle class office workers with bowler hat and pinstripe trousers and spats. You find the same costumes in the opening town square scene in the Red Shoes. Heckroth actually had 6 months working on the design for the Red Shoes, and in particular focusing on the ballet of the Red Shoes, and created a number of colour sketches for each scene in it, and then produced a storyboard. He had 6 months because the team who made the Red Shoes, the so-called the Archers, consisting of Michael Powell, director, and Emmerich Pressburger, producer, they hired Heckroth and then finished off their previous film, Black Narcissus, while Heckroth largely worked on his own. And Heckroth, of course, knew all about how ballet can be used as a medium to tell stories, and to tell stories of a contemporary in a contemporary setting through Ballet Jos. The Ballet of the Red Shoes is, as I've said, very much a ballet set in a contemporary town. It's a town rather than, say, a palace in Sleeping Beauty or a pastoral village in Giselle. There's clearly some kind of social stratification, working class, middle class people, office workers, somebody who works in a shop, and the fair, and this kind of class hierarchy rather than the order of precedence in a royal court in a ballet like Sleeping Beauty or Swan Lake. And the shoemaker in ballet might be a kind of malevolent figure straight out of a fairy tale, but his shop front, his shoe shop, is straight out of mid 20th century high street. And Red Shoes, this advertisement for Louboutin shows, is still a very, very desirable consumer product. Here are a couple of photographs of the shoes of the wife of the Filipino president in the 60s and 70s and 80s, Imelda Marcos, who embezzled the country's taxes to amass a collection of 3,000 shoes, and a lot of them, as you can see from these photographs, were red. And as I've said, there's an eerie force exerted on the dancer wearing the red shoes as part of the ballet story shown on stage, but at the end of the film, the red shoes actually cause Vicky to dance out of the theatre and jump to her death. One sequence from the ballet that shows the kind of quite complex mixture of modernist styles and contemporary setting that I think is worth looking at in a little bit of detail is a bit I'm going to call the newspaper dance. So in this, the Red Shoes have dragged Vicky away from everyone she knows, can't stop dancing. She's ended up what seems to be very, very late at night in the suburbs, and you can see the chimney tops silhouetted in the background. And there is a newspaper blowing about the pavement, and the newspaper becomes a kind of puppet that she briefly dances with. And of course, this is before CGI, so it's must be a puppet on a string. This puppet turns into a real dancer whose costume is covered with bits of newspaper and whose forehead has painted on it le jeu, which I think is a deliberate reference to Cubist collages like this Livia Mark from 1913 by Picasso, where part of a newspaper has been stuck onto the collage, showing the words le jeu. So that, you know, that there's a kind of reference to that kind of early 20th century modernism. But then the newspaper man disappears, and his place is taken by the malevolent shoemaker, and the dawn breaks, and what seemed to be suburban rooftops becomes a scene of urban apocalypse, with a kind of a very dire, threatening sun breaking in the background, breaking in a very similar way to the sun in Ludwig Meissner's apocalyptic landscape from 1913. And the whole colour scheme of this scene is reminiscent of Franz Marc's Fate of the Animals from 1912. These two kind of apocalyptic German expressionist paintings from before the First World War. People saw them subsequently as perhaps anticipating the war, but in some ways they're just reflecting a kind of concern about the pace of change of modernity in progress as unstoppable, going too fast, and going too far. And of course, in the Red Shoes, the main character is wearing unstoppable dancing shoes. So it seems to me that unstoppable progress might be seen as the hidden other in 1948 in the Red Shoes. The hidden other in 2010 in Black Swan, I think, is very different. Here it's the ill effects of the promotion of individualism by neoliberal ideologies. So just very briefly, the ballet background of the Black Swan. As I've already said, the company seems to be based at the Lincoln Center in New York, which is where New York City Ballet was based, and the person playing the role of the principal male dancer in the company, who plays Prince Siegfried in their production of Swan Lake, was Benjamin Millepied, or I don't know, he was French, so maybe it would be pronounced Millepied. And he was a member of New York City Ballet, ending up as principal and choreographer there between 1995 and 2011. A film came out in 2010. But the other dancers in the company were actually from Philadelphia Ballet, the corps de ballet from Philadelphia Ballet, were just hired, presumably off-season, as extras in some of the ballet scenes. And there were two dancers who who were the dancing doubles of Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis. Sarah Lane from American Ballet Theatre was Portman's double. And when Black Swan was nominated for Oscars, and in fact Portman won the Oscar for Best Female Actor, Sarah Lane commented to Wendy Perron in Dance Magazine that Portman had spent nearly a year taking weekly ballet classes, preparing for the role before shooting started for Black Swan. But it takes more than that to make a really good professional dancer. And that she'd actually done a lot of the dancing, and that in some cases Portman's film had been fitted in using computer graphics over her body. And then Aronofsky, the director, and Benjamin Millepied, who by that time had actually married Portman, both said, well, actually, we most of the footage of the dancing was actually done by Portman herself. And when you look at it, a lot of the dancing was actually in close-up. The aesthetic of Black Swan doesn't come primarily from the dancing in the way that the aesthetic of modernism informed the Red Shoes. Instead, it comes from the horror movie genre. Quite early on, you see Nina scratching her fingernail until it draws blood, and then magically all the blood's disappeared. Is it in her imagination? And similarly, scratching her back. It's never quite clear whether she's really scratching her back or not. And then there's this very, very eerie scene that I'll say a little bit more about, when she's having a fitting for her costume in the wardrobe, the company wardrobe, and she's standing with these parallel mirrors so that her reflection goes off, doubling her on into infinity, and one of the figures starts to scratch their back and turns round, and it's her. And then finally, at the end, when she finds this shard of broken mirror in her stomach, so the blood all these kind of bloody scenes are straight out of horror movie genre. The scene with reflections in the wardrobe mirrors is eerie in Fisher's terms, because there's something there where there ought to be nothing. By this stage of the film, we, the viewers, are probably beginning to suspect that Nina is becoming detached from reality. Mark Fisher says about a novel by Christopher Priest, "How is it possible to conceal something from ourselves? How can a single entity be simultaneously the one who is hiding something as well as the one from whom something is hidden?" Nina is hiding something as well as being a person that she's hiding it from. Nina's insecurity is an effect of this eerie split. In dance terms, it's shown through the close-ups of upper body dancing with a very mobile camera. Does Nina know what she's doing while she's dancing? She's very much being moved around by other people. There's a kind of lack of agency, and that lack of agency to outside forces is what Fisher said is a feature of the Eerie. And at the end of the film, Nina ends up stabbing Lily with a shard of broken mirror, only to realise, after she's given a triumphant performance as the Black Odile, that she's actually stabbed herself. Lily's corpse, which was there just before she went on stage for the Black Swan act, is eerily not there, and her blood is just, again, has disappeared. Horribly, the shard of glass is there where there should have been nothing. So now I want to look in a little more depth at this question about eeriness in the films and the hidden other of the times. Both films are eerie because things happen in them that don't fit with rational expectations about how things are meant to be. Something is coming from outside ordinary experience that, in The Red Shoes, exerts control over Vicky through her red dancing shoes, and in Black Swan causes horrible things to seem to be happening around Nina that both she and we, the viewers, think we're seeing. In Hans Christian Andersen's story, a village girl who wants to wear the red shoes is then punished for her pride and vanity. In the ballet, in the film, the gleefully malevolent shoemaker, as I've said, might have come out of an old fairy tale, but his shop is straight off mid-20th century high street. Modern industry requires consumption. This consumption takes Vicky over and won't let her go. The dream of the 20th century was the construction of a mass utopia that progress was helping to make reality. This dream required a state of perpetual modernisation, of dismantling old structures and making new beginnings. Continual consumption, because of built-in obsolescence, was essential for modern industry. So, unstoppable progress, unstoppable dancing shoes. But there is a downside to unstoppable progress. Walter Benjamin's description of Paul Klee's watercolour Angelus Novus, which Benjamin owned for a while, he writes this in his late essay on the concept of history. This evokes the downside of progress. Here's what Benjamin wrote. His, the angel's, eyes are staring, his mouth is open, his wings are spread. This is how one pictures the angel of history. His face is turned toward the past. Where we perceive a chain of events, he sees one single catastrophe which keeps piling wreckage and hurls it in front of his feet. The angel would like to stay, awaken the dead, and make whole what has been smashed. But a storm is blowing from paradise. It has got caught in his wings with such violence that the angel can no longer close them. The storm irresistibly propels him into the future to which his back is turned, while the pile of debris before him grows skywards. This storm is what we call progress. So in the scene of the apocalyptic townscape, which I said is informed by a German expressionist aesthetic, the scene there is one of catastrophe and wreckage, a pile of debris growing skywards, just like the wreckage that Benjamin describes. What Mark Fisher calls the hidden other of the times of the Red Shoes was the potential for catastrophe in the promise of progress. The hidden other of the times of the Black Swan, as I suggested, was neoliberal individualism. And Margaret Thatcher famously claimed in a very neoliberal way that there's no such thing as society. For neoliberals, the problem with society is that the individual might owe obligations to others that could get in the way of individual self-realisation. However, Wendy Brown notes that, quote, if individuals are simply economic and moral actors who pursue their own good, it's possible through neoliberal policies to get rid of the domain we call society. Quote, so if you were rich or if you were poor, that had to do with your own individual entrepreneurship or failure at it. This winner-loser binary underlies the rivalry between women dancers in the ballet company. Wendy Brown argues that neoliberalism creates a world that reduces people to homo economicus, a person who makes rational economic choices at work which require the what she calls the entrepreneurialization of the self, the need to enhance one's value, keep it from depreciating, and do this at every level. Make yourself into an asset that people want to invest in. And what she's describing there is perhaps the way that social media or Instagram influencers want to enhance their value and keep it from depreciating. But I think it also applies to the female ballet dancers auditioning for the role of Odette Adil in Black Swan. When Leroy auditions the dancers, he's looking for a new asset to invest in, and they want to appear to be promising assets. However malign their actions might be, however, one cannot blame Leroy or Erica or Lily for Nina's breakdown. Leroy coaches Nina to fulfill her potential, while her mother just wants the best for her. What I think is the cause of her breakdown is the fact that there is no sense of community in Black Swan, just competing individuals. In this workplace, what is missing is what Wendy Brown calls, quote, the web of connecting power among us that potentially binds us together. The absence of this web of connections is the hidden other of its time. So just to finish off, I want to look at one scene each from Red Shoes and Black Swan. First, the eerie absence in the scene with the empty spotlight at the end of the Red Shoes. There's nothing there where there ought to be something. The story of the film up till then prepares us for this absence, but not for the eerie force that still seems to inhabit it. And then returning to the mirror scene in Black Swan, there's something there, the person who, the Nina that scratches her back and then turns around and looks at her. There's something there where there ought to be nothing. We've seen various events that gradually prepare us as the viewers for this, but they don't explain the eerie force that seems to be making these things happen. So these two films, like cultural forms in general, they don't explicitly say this is the hidden other of their time, but they hint at it through symptoms, and in these two films through the eerie symptoms. The eerie feelings that these films evoke give us, the viewers, a nudge to just begin to wonder, well, what is it? What is this force? There's something eerie that's not quite right. This hidden other of the times. Thank you for watching.